All right, Indiana falls 94-69 Tuesday, January 14th to Illinois at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. For Indiana Hoosiers on SI, I'm Jack Ankony, joined with my colleague Todd Golden, and we're going to start doing these post-game video reactions a little bit more often here, sort of just to give our thoughts on the game and kind of where things stand with this Indiana team. So Todd's second straight 25-point loss for Indiana after last weekend's 85-60 loss at Iowa. Really, not much positive at all to take away from this game. Indiana got killed on the glass, missed their first 13 threes, gave up 11 threes. Got pretty ugly there with some Fire Woodson chants from the student section. There was a dust up late in the game that kind of made it even uglier. So I guess we'll start with kind of getting into the game first and how everything happened. I think Illinois got out to a 20-8 lead. What did you see from the Illini kind of in the first half, how they were able to establish themselves?
I saw a lot of open lanes for Kasparas Yakajonas to drive down. He made, I believe, Illinois' first 3 buckets of the game. I saw a lot of Indiana defenders getting caught up on screens and just hardly any will to kind of set the tone defensively on the part of the Hoosiers, and Illinois made them pay for it. It was ugly right from the start, and then things got worse with the offensive rebounds that Indiana was giving up to Illinois. It was a meltdown. It was Illinois ended up scoring 60 points in the first half, which we believe is a Assembly Hall opponent record. So it doesn't really get any worse than that. It was a really, really, really bad night for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, I thought the most jarring thing in the first half was the rebounding disparity, because there were some where Illinois established position and did their work early, I guess you could say, in terms of boxing out, but there were also several where they just seemed like the hungrier team to go after those loose balls. And Brad Underwood was talking after the game about how that's just kind of what their program is built on. He's like, I write that on the board 100 times a day, and that just doesn't seem like it's emphasized as much with Indiana. I think the rebounding's gotten better in some games recently, but it's been a problem in a lot of games this year.
The problem that I think everybody saw, especially people here who were here at Assembly Hall, I don't know how much it showed up on the broadcast, but sometimes you get a long rebound, and it's not always the fault of the big man inside to be able to track that down. They happen, especially with more 3-point shots. What is the fault of the big man is once Illinois got those rebounds, there is very little will on the part of either Omar Ballo and Langdon Hatton to prevent some of those second chance buckets. Were not tip-ins. I mean, they were caught rebounds outside of the lane, and then their man just drove right around them and scored. And that's what was really disturbing, among the many things that was disturbing about the first half, was it just didn't seem like Indiana had the will to kind of put their foot down and take a stand. They just kind of let Illinois do whatever they wanted.
Yeah. I think another big problem that continues to be an issue for this team and really under Woodson for the last several years is kind of the 3-point defense. They seem pretty willing to give up those shots as opposed to, drives to the lane. Illinois hit 11 today. I think there was a sequence there towards the end of the first half when they hit 5 threes in about 3 or 4 minutes to really blow the game open. I think they took a 28-point lead into halftime. Indiana gets booed into the locker room. I mean, do you think that's something that Indiana can fix, or is that just sort of, in terms of the 3-point defense?
Yeah, I think it can be fixed, but there needs to be accountability to fix it. And, what I saw tonight again, was Indiana players getting caught on screens. I mean, what we don't know is, are they supposed to be going over or under the screen? It looks to me like they're trying to go over and just weren't able to do it. And some of that is will of the players, but some of that is the accountability if they don't do it. And that has to come from the bench. And I don't see a whole lot of evidence that the accountability is being provided by the coaching staff when those things happen. Because as you said, they happen all the time.
Yeah. So now I guess in the second half, Indiana made a little bit of a run there at the start. I think they went on a 10-0 run, cut it to about 16. It's a little bit of energy in the stadium, but it didn't really feel like they were, back in the game yet. I mean,
yeah, kind of winging a prayer type stuff. Yeah. I mean, I did our live blog tonight, and I was commenting sort of out of desperation, because what else are you going to write about at that point? That, in a game like that, you have to treat each media timeout like it's its own entity. and they needed to realistically shave off 6 points for every media timeout. They actually did it on the first one. They got the lead down to at one point it was 10. They shaved off 10 off the deficit. I think it ended up being 8 at the end of that media timeout, and they were on pace when they got it down to a 16-point deficit to do it again. But that's just it's crazy to think you can sustain that, and they weren't able to. And Illinois eventually pushed the lead back up into the 30s later on. But the crowd that was left, I mean, a lot of people, especially students, left at halftime. They got into it almost in a, the miracle might be on. It's almost like gallows humor type cheering on the part of the fans who were here, because what choice do you have? But it was just, it was just a false dawn. There was really no coming back from that really poor first half that IU played.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've talked a lot about the defense and rebounding issues today, but even offensively, I think Indiana shot below 40% today. They missed their first 13 3-point attempts, which for a while there, I think it was Galloway made one with about 5 minutes left.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
For a while there, it was looking like it was going to be 2 straight games against Illinois without a 3-pointer made, if you include last year.
Right.
When they went 0-9 in Champaign. I mean, this team's been really up and down in terms of 3-point shooting. They went 1 for 20 in that one other game, and they've had some games when they make 8 or 9, but today I think finished 4 for 18, just really cold in that respect. And turnovers were a little bit less today than Iowa, but just not a good offensive performance either.
No, it wasn't. I just don't feel like there's I felt like there was a lot of desperate shots. I think a lot of those 3-point shots, some of them were open, but a lot of them were quick because IU was down by such a massive amount. So I do think that those weren't terrible shots, but they weren't shots taken confidently, because you're trying to get yourself back, make a miracle run to get back into a blowout game. So I think that had a role in it. But the offense overall from the beginning just seemed really incoherent. You saw a lot of, desperation drives that they get away with sometimes, and at other times they don't. And let's be honest, I want to mention somebody else. Mackenzie Ambak has been pretty horrible in the last several games. He was 1 of 10 from the field tonight. He's part of the problem. I mean, he's not the only part of the problem, but I mean, he's one of the top 3 scorers on this team, and he hasn't been scoring lately, and it's a big part of their issue.
Yeah, back-to-back rough games from Trey Galloway too.
Yeah, Trey Galloway was not good tonight after a very poor game at Iowa, and you need your leaders to produce.
Mm-hmm.
Because your ability to lead is to some degree dependent on what you're able to do on the floor too. I mean, not everybody can be kind of that glue guy that could pull the team together without doing things on the floor. You got to be able to perform. And up until his later ejection, Omar Ballo at least seemed like he was giving effort tonight. He ended up with 16 points and 15 boards, and I don't know that I'd call him a leader, but at least he was giving effort up until the point where he lost his head late in the game.
Yeah, it also feels like a problem Indiana's running into offensively, I think, is they're putting so much responsibility with Miles Rice because he's their most dynamic playmaker, quickest guy. 5 turnovers today. I think he had 4 or 5, maybe even 6 at Iowa. It's sort of something that you have to live with him. I think the turnovers, it's kind of been a problem, and that it's just sort of the nature of his kind of rapid-paced game. It just sort of feels like Woodson, to a certain extent, is too much, just telling him, hey, go get a shot for us, or go make something happen, and it leads to issues.
I agree completely. I don't think Miles Rice is really a big issue with this team, other than to what you said in terms of just when you got a bunch of players on the floor with him who either aren't making their shots or aren't giving 100% at both ends of the floor, it really puts your point guard in a bad spot. And I do feel, in that respect, for Miles Rice, that he's been placed in that position. I think he's playing hard. He's making some mistakes, but they're mistakes that you could live with if everybody else was bringing it to the floor. And right now, I don't feel like many of those players are.
Yeah. So we've sort of mentioned it a few times earlier, but kind of the ugly ending was sort of that dust up, there near the baseline. Can you kind of just talk about, what you saw from that and kind of the post-game reaction?
Right. I mean, it was I think it was 2:14 left in the game. Illinois took a 3-point shot. Tomislav Ivasic, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that.
They got some tough names.
Yeah, they do. They sure do. But he was lined up for the rebound. Luke Goody came in from around the elbow and put in a pretty hard hip to hip hit. When I watched it originally on replay, I thought it was a little out of line on Goody's part. I watched it later and it didn't seem as bad. But point was, it was a 31-point game and it probably wasn't necessary. Ivasic took exception. He was jawing in Goody's ear a little bit after the play on the baseline. Miles Rice came in, gave Ivasic a shove. There was some pushing and shoving. It wasn't really that bad, but what made it worse is Omar Ballo came in kind of third man in style, leaped over the top of Anthony Leal and gave Ivasic another shove, which got Ballo ejected from the game for a flagrant 2 foul. So
Right.
Not necessary. It was a bad enough night as it was. Was it the worst confrontation I've seen? No, but it's just, given the context of what else happened in the game, it was just one less thing that Indiana didn't need to deal with.
Yeah.
We'll see if Ballo can play on Friday at Ohio State. Flagrant 2s are the way we wrote it is at the discretion of the Big Ten. That's not necessarily an automatic suspension from the next game. Last year, Xavier Johnson got a flagrant 2 for punching a Rutgers player in a sensitive area, we'll say, and he played in the next game. So we'll see. But it was just an unnecessary little bit of ugliness that kind of capped the whole night of just a badness for the Hoosiers. I mean, it just wasn't. It just wasn't necessary.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. I'd agree with you there. So, I think we'll wrap it up with that. Indiana falls 94-69 to Illinois. They're 13-5 overall, 4-3 in Big Ten play. Travel to Ohio State on Friday. Todd will be there for Hoosiers on SI. And, we'll try to keep doing these kind of post-game reactions to sort of just share some of our more personal thoughts. But I think that should do it. And we'll hear from Todd Friday in Columbus.
Thanks for watching.